Howdy guys, Bookie Laura here. Today I'm bringing you my May wrap-up. I mean, I can't believe it's the end of May, and I know people say this in every wrap-up they do, but I purely can't believe it's the end of May because I barely read anything. I've read 5 books in total, and if I'm honest, I only read that many because we had a holiday at the end of May and I've managed to read a couple of books. Otherwise I would have been looking at a really limited amount. And I think part of that's just because, you know, life, but also because it didn't have a good start. What I've done this month is, as I finished the books, I filmed the little 1-minute review so that I don't have to do it now, and then I don't have to rely on my memory. So I'm going to insert those here, and then, you know, hopefully it'll be a bit more relevant and useful. So the first book which I read this month was Prodigy by Mary Lou, probably. It's the second book in the series. It comes after Legend. I listened to Legend last summer, so quite a long time ago, as an audiobook, but was really, really interested in it. I felt it's a classic YA, you know, it's got a lot of that love and cliche, but equally, you know, cracking adventure story at the same time. So I decided to carry on the series when I saw it in my library, and I'm really pleased that I did. I did really enjoy it. I think that it carries on this element of looking at the grey area because of the characters. It follows 2 main characters who obviously fell in love in the first book, and then they're working together, you know, for the greater good to change the world. It's just classic YA dystopia, but their sort of feelings and opinions change throughout the book, and I like the fact that it explored both sides of the dystopia, and the characters were conflicted and they were realistic. And it really explored, you know, they didn't just agree with each other because they were in love or disagree and fall out of love. It felt a bit more real than that, which you don't often find in YA. But basically, if you like Legend, then I think you'll like this too, because it's very, very similar, and I think I gave it 4 stars. So I've just recently finished reading Artemis, Fowl and the Lost Colony, I think it was called. I read it, rented it from my library and read it on my phone. So I read it as an ebook, so I haven't seen the physical cover, and I often forget the titles when I do that. But anyway, I'm a bit sad because I didn't like it that much. Like, I've read the whole Artemis Fowl series as part of the read-along and really, really enjoyed it, but this one just didn't do it for me. I think there were other factors at play. Reading as an ebook isn't entirely for me. I have had a crazy busy time, so I was only reading a little bit at a time rather than a lot. And I think I just never really got into the story. But I found myself, for the first time ever, kind of skipping over paragraphs and being like, oh yeah, I kind of get what's going on here, but just not invested in the story. And also, I think Artemis Fowl being a teenager is adding elements that I don't like adding to a book, if you catch my drift. So that's where we're at. My timer is up. I gave it 3 stars. It was alright, but I mean, I was never gripped to read it. It's my least favourite of the Artemis Fowl series so far. I'd be interested to know what other people make of it, whether that's a common theme or whether that's just me. Anyway, moving on. So the next book which I read this month was Vox by Christina Daka. It's basically a dystopian future in which women are treated badly. I mean, they have counters on their wrists and they're only allowed to speak a total of 100 words at maximum in a day. If they speak more than 100, then they get electrocuted. And it's basically that kind of dystopian misery, very Handmaid's Tale-esque, I suppose. I enjoyed this as a book, but my feelings were kind of like up and down. I really liked the world building of dystopian futures. I like the idea when you read them and you're just like, this is so horrific, and thinking about how that feels a little too close for comfort. But then it felt, I wasn't quite sure what sort of style it was going for. It had, whether it was just going to tell the story of specific characters or explore the dystopia in more detail. And I don't think I figured that out until quite late. And then the ending was really quick. Dismiss. The ending was really, really quick, which surprised me. I think I only had about 50 pages left when it felt like the story was really building up to the exciting events, and so it ended really quickly. And I think that was the biggest downside for me. I think I gave it a 4 stars because it couldn't be a 5 stars. I felt the ending wasn't like I would have hoped it would be. Oh, it was, yeah, the ending wasn't good. It was a little bit rushed, and then the actual ending just made me go, bleh, you know. But it's a great dystopia. If you like dystopian books, you'll enjoy it. And a little too close for comfort and really reminded me of Handmaid's Tale. So the next book which I read this month was Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I mean, basically this book, you're introduced to the character, Eleanor Oliphant, unsurprisingly, and you get to know her a bit at the start. She leads life in a very methodical way and often seemingly lacks a lot of social skills and reacts to things in an odd way. She sees things in a different way. And I kind of started reading it going, oh yeah, this is okay. But then as it went on, I think I got more and more invested in the kind of mystery element. You're left wondering what's happened in her life. Who is she? How is she this way? And then by the end, I was just completely absorbed in her as a character, and you want the best for her. I have heard huge ravings about this book, and I think I can see exactly why. It's one of those books that just drags you in right from the start, and I really felt a drive that I wanted to read this all the time. I read it really quickly, considering that I've not been reading as much as usual lately. And I do think that that's largely just down to how well the character is written, that you really do empathise with her, but also that kind of, you know, mystery element where things are revealed slowly and gradually, and but oh, read this book. It was a real feel-good book as well. Which is surprising considering the content, but it is a feel-good book. It makes you want to be a better person, and it makes you feel better about who you are and being yourself and all those wonderful things. So I highly recommend this. I think I gave it 5 stars. And the final book which I read this month was Gathering Blue by Lois Lowry, I think. It's part of the series that starts with the book The Giver. It's a quartet, I think, which is quite unusual, certainly in my reading habits. And it follows a character called Kira, who is in a dystopian world, and there are very few, if any, connections to The Giver in itself, which is good because I read it a long, long time ago. But it's basically, you know, her mum and dad have died, she gets taken away, she's got this amazing talent, and it's her discovering, you know, what's going on. A lot of it reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. Is that what it was called? It had real feeling of that, and I was really curious. I'd be really curious to find out which came first, because I felt like, yeah, there were really obvious connections. But basically, for me, I'm struggling to say anything about this book because I just found it very meh. Like it's okay, it ticked along, but I didn't at any point feel excited to read it. I think the fact that it was really short, I thought would be a big bonus, but actually I felt it lacked depth, and even though it was short, I struggled to read it particularly quickly. So I think if it had been any longer, I might have really, really struggled to read it, but if it had been longer, there might have been more depth, so who knows. Overall, it was like an okay reading month, but limited on the books. I think the only thing that drags it up to feeling like an okay reading month was the fact that I read some really good books. Actually, I loved Eleanor Oliphant. I enjoyed Vox, but the ones in between were a bit like, oh. I'm quite excited for June because the book that I've started reading, spoiler alert, I'm loving, and that is The Chalk Man by CJ Tudor, I think. But anyway, I'm loving that, and that's got me really excited for June. I'm shortly going to fill my TBR jar for June, and yeah, I'm really excited because there's so many books that I want to read, and I just feel, you know, when you're just in a moment where you think I really want to read. Maybe that's because I recently read a 5-star. But anyway, hope you've had a wonderful reading month in May, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.